For the first time, scientists have decoded details of people's dreams using brain scans. What does this mean about dreams and about mind-reading machines and the nature of consciousness? Let's just kick things off with you, John. You are also rapidly becoming the resident HuffPost Live science explainer man. What was this experiment, John?
Well, it was very clever, and this comes from a crack team of Japanese brain researchers who, this is just the latest in a string of amazing technological feats for them. Am I coming through okay?
Yeah.
Great. So in a nutshell, they took these poor, unsuspecting, volunteers and gave them some nights of very bad sleep. They essentially loaded them up into a functional magnetic resonance imager, which is a big magnet, and had them just drift off to sleep and then kept on waking them up just as they were drifting off. And then they would ask them, what were you dreaming about? And so they did this numerous times until they had collected about 200 little dream scenes from which they were able to extract categories of things like, oh, I was dreaming about being in the office, or I was dreaming I was at dinner. And so they built up a list of terms like, oh, let's say this was a dream that had a car in it, this had a chair in it, and so forth. They weren't that exotic because you don't get the really crazy nutty dreams until you get to the REM state. This is not a REM dream. This is that beginning of sleep. It's called a hypnagogic hallucination, where you're just drifting off. And if someone wakes you up, oh, you remember that you were dreaming something. And then they applied a computational technique called machine learning to try and decode the brain patterns that corresponded to those objects that they listed. And they had to do some refinement after those nights of bad sleep to really zero in on those patterns. And then they put those poor people back in the magnet, had them fall back asleep, woke them up, and tried to predict, based on those patterns that they had decoded, what they were dreaming about. And they had about 60% accuracy, which is striking.
Now, I understand that they were only able to choose between two different options, right? It's not like they could look at the brain scan and say, oh, you were dreaming about a cactus. It was either cactus or chair, and they could tell which one. Is that right?
Well, they had essentially, no, they had a list of categories for each person. It was unique for each person. And so they were choosing from among those categories.
Oh, okay, I see. By the way, it does sound like the most irritating study to be a subject in. Just as you're drifting off to sleep, someone keeps shaking you awake. What are you thinking about now? Just let me go to sleep, for the love of God. Dan, how good are we at understanding what's going on in the brain as it correlates to what it is that we're thinking about? Is this any kind of a leap?
I wouldn't call it a leap, but it's definitely a technical achievement and a step forward. As you were just pointing out, it's the difference between a multiple choice question and an essay exam. When you can ask the question wide open, what are you thinking about? And the brain scanner can tell you that answer, that's brain reading or mind reading. And so this is on the path to that. And it is, I'd say, pretty amazing because used to be that when Macbeth asked, is this a dagger which I see before me? We had to take his word for it. But with this, if Macbeth had been in the scanner, we could say, yeah, that is a dagger which you see before you, or we could say, no, it's actually a hammer which you see before you, you're misdescribing it. We weren't able to do that before this.
It's fascinating. I mean, what is it that we're seeing in the brain? When I'm say dreaming about a car, and I'm dreaming about driving along in a car, what is it that the MRI is picking up? Is it that there's a particular region of the brain that's lighting up? Is it the way that the activity is unfolding in the brain? Is it the connections that are going on?
It's really pretty complicated. They looked at several visual areas in the brain, including the area that is traditionally associated with face recognition, other areas that are visual. And so what it's looking at is a very complicated pattern, which might not look like much of anything if we just looked at it spread out as pixels. And that's where their decoder is busy learning what the pattern is that is the subject's brain in response to this hallucination that they're having.